Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is being and vibration. With me is Joseph Rael, whose Picarese Pueblo Indian sacred name translates to beautiful painted arrow. Joseph holds a master's degree in political science from the University of Wisconsin. He's an artist, philosopher, poet, visionary, and creator of sacred music. And he's also the author of 2 books, Beautiful Painted Arrow and Being and Vibration. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much.
It really is a joy to have you with me.
Thank you.
Your name, I mentioned the English translation of your
right.
sacred name is Beautiful Painted Arrow. It's the Tiwa language. Could you tell us something about that?
Yes, the Tiwa language is a metaphoric language. It's a language of sound and vibration. And my name translates, and when I mention the word, you'll actually hear the arrow in space and then hitting the target and then vibrating the beauty that is coming off of the shaft of the arrow. Mm-hmm. And the name is pronounced Lutekoe, 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 Lutekoe. So the original idea of the arrow was a sacred arrow that the warriors carried in their quiver, and that sacred arrow was painted with sacred emblems or energies, and that arrow was never used because it was a magical arrow. It was a spiritual arrow, and it was only used for spiritual purposes, and that's where that name came from. As a matter of fact, when I entered my father's village back in 1940, the man who carried the name Lutekoe had just crossed over, and it was the practice of the village at Picarese Pueblo that the next child would automatically get the name of the deceased person, mm-hmm. because the idea was to keep that vibration in the village and keep that vibration alive, and you could keep it alive through pronouncing that word. So that's how I got my name.
Yeah. I have a sense from reading your books and from my studies that the Pueblo Indian culture has a timeless quality to it. It's an ancient culture, perhaps 10,000 years old or so, and that the way of life until recently has been very much grounded in the fundamental bases of existence, without a lot of the trappings of modern culture that seem to have ensnared so many of us.
Yes, I believe that's true. I know that I found out when I was going to graduate school, University of Wisconsin, that I began to realize the tremendous power of that language, because I began to realize, even to a much greater degree, that the language was not really a language of, or for the purposes of communication, but it was a language that was spoken in order to stay connected to the land and to all of the principal ideas that surrounded the consciousness of Picarese Pueblo. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I think all of the prehistoric societies, including Picarese, were ancient mystery schools. Mm-hmm. They were mystery schools in themselves, and that they came to teach the mystery of life through language.
One of the things that you point out in your writings is that this language was never a written language, and written languages developed for different purposes, for practical purposes, political purposes, not necessarily as closely grounded in the sacred as the non-written.
Yes, and one of the reasons that they did that, at least I was told early on, was because oral tradition allows that language to continue to grow as the people are growing in consciousness. So the pronunciation actually ignites a resonance in the psyche of that individual speaking it or hearing it, and it does something with developing higher consciousness.
Yeah. And when you've lived as you have in a culture which has been stable for so long and not involved in industrial society, you have, I think, a different sense of the purpose of life itself, the reason for being and the nature of existence.
Well, it gives the feeling that a sense of a deep sense of eternity, like as if the outer changes that are taking place, but there's an inner, very deep, profound level that is continually there, perpetuating whatever is occurring in the outer peripheries of daily life.
Mm-hmm. That's what I found so beautiful in your writings and in all of your work. It comes through very, very strongly, this sense of eternity, that you realize that in the face of eternity, this lifespan of ours is just a blink of an eye.
Well, I've noticed that more so now after I've gotten more into the ancient mysteries of my father's people, that even the way they walk, the way they sit and walk, you can almost feel the resonance of a very old people, a very ancient level of being that's right within the way they live, the way they move, and then their dances and how they do them and worship that way.
I think I was particularly impressed when you talked about your grandmother and how even in cleaning the house and sweeping the floor, every movement was a way of reminding you of your connection with the world of spirit or the world of eternity.
Yes, you see, because they related everything to sound. So when she was sweeping the floor, for instance, there was that sound of the boom, and I'll just make it for you here, is chile, chile, chile. That sound. Well, that sound can take you into trance state by just repeating it over and over. And that's the sound that they used to teach us was for the purposes of getting into the foundation of life. Apparently, consciousness does have a foundation or floor, if you will, the basis for everything, the floor plan. And that sound could take you in, so that even as she was sweeping, she was reminding us that's even sweeping the floor was a meditation. And of course the dust was she used to joke with us and say that was to entrap you into it, so that you can become stronger in your beliefs and foundation. So
You've worked much of your adult life with vibration.
that's right.
And with sound. And I gather that much of this is original to you through your own visionary experience, but much of it came through the teachings of the Ute peoples and the Pueblo peoples that were imparted to you.
Yes, a lot of it came right out of the teachings. Doing the Ute Sundance, for instance, was a very important time for me, because it allowed me to grow in very beautiful, significant ways in developing my visionary capacities. With the Pueblo people doing the animal dances, because the animal dances are really ways by which the people dance the vibrations of being. You see, all the animal dances, the Indian that they dance, and the plant dances are connected to forms that create the significance of cosmic consciousness. You see. So it was developing since I was about 8 years old, and it just continued on until such time as I began to follow those forms consciously.
Now, you've mentioned the sun dance, and many of our viewers may not be familiar with that. I understand there has been some controversy around it. I wonder if you could tell us, for you, what the sun dance is.
The sun dance, I think, is the way by which, at least for me, I learn how enlightenment works. Enlightenment, I believe, comes like in a flash of light. At least that's the way I understand it. It's like a flash, which I call a circle of light. And out of that flash, out of that circle of light, certain information or wisdom is translated into conscious thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I learned about the sun dance,
Mm-hmm.
and what it is.
Can you describe a little bit about the actual dance itself?
There's a pole. We do the sun dance dream quest, in which we dance back and forth to this pole that has a Y at the very top, and we dance back and forth to it over a period of 3 days, 3 to 4 days, with no food or water. And as we dance, the second or third day, we reach very deep spiritual levels,
Mm-hmm.
in which we go into the dream, the dream, because this is a dream. We're living in the dream state,
Mm-hmm.
and so we go into this perceptual reality.
Yeah. In fact, I thought it was fascinating that you posed the question in one of your books that has often come to my mind. It's a question I don't think many people ask, but the question is, are we real?
That's right. One of the questions that I asked early on was, are we real? And the question the answer came, and doing my ceremonies, is that we're not real. Actually, we're like a strobe light that comes on, goes off, comes on, comes on. But it's happening so fast that we don't realize that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
When we cease to exist in any single moment that we do, at that moment we return back to the infinite, and then return again. And it is the light that helps us to keep that consciousness and that continuity. But otherwise, we're total clarity, which is the color of the dark, of dark light, but it's so pure that it's clear.
It's hard for me to totally grasp the meaning of all of your words, but my sense is that what you're saying is that we're like projections on a movie screen. Exactly. Coming from another, yes. Not even another dimension, coming from eternity itself.
Yes, from eternity itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the Tiwa culture, we call it na mene. Na mene means soil or earth, and na means the self, me means goodness that is in a place of movement. Goodness and movement are synonymous. And so you have there the movement that creates us to exist as projections from the base, which is the planet, in this case the planet Earth, you see, mm-hmm. the soil. Because the soil is not really soil, it's infused with consciousness, you see. So therefore the land for us is very precious, because it's our mother. In fact, in Tiwa we say Kiata Mene, which means mother, father, and Kia means placement that is purifying, and Ta Mene means seed that is in a state of movement. Mm-hmm. And those two combinations is what makes the basis for consciousness. That the mother provides the place. In the spring, when we used to go out and plant the fields, the land that we were tilting and that we were cultivating, and I'd follow the plow and drop the seeds. Well, the land is the mother that is purifying the seed once it is embedded there, and the seed is the father, and that movement is the awareness or the germination that is occurring with the seed. And Tiwa translates that as a way of talking about higher consciousness, that's how it's happening. Remember, these people were agrarian, agrarian-based.
Well, I have to confess, perhaps some of our viewers will feel the same way, that this way of thinking and being is a bit of a stretch for me. It's, you know, in my normal English mental framework, I have a hard time totally entering into that worldview. But what does come through very clearly for me is that every moment, instant by instant, there is a sense of the sacred purpose of life.
That's right, because you see, every single movement, every single action is sacred, because that action, by the very nature of that action, its beingness is coming from the vibration of the nature, of the order of Mother Nature, of the earth and the sky and everything.
You write quite a bit about vibration and how we were created as an expression of some sort of eternal fundamental vibration, seeking to, I'm not sure what, seeking to play or seeking to know, seeking to experience.
Yes, my conclusions are that everything that we have in the physical form on the planet Earth is crystallized thought that originally was moving very rapidly and then slowed down and crystallized. And that energy eventually, because it was seeking to know itself, finally created everything else that finally takes on the different forms that makes up the constellations of cosmic thought. So in order to go back and get in touch with the universal intelligence of consciousness, for me what I did was I went back to the forms that were already there, not only in the Tiwa language, but also realizing that a tree is a tree, but it's more than a tree, but still it's a tree, you see. And looked at the rock, it's more than a rock. And I began to find the different levels that they were, besides that they were rocks and trees, or mountains or rivers.
In the Pueblo peoples who have basically maintained this understanding for so long, there's a deep, what would you call it? You mentioned the term mystery school earlier, or perhaps a shamanistic tradition to maintain an understanding of working with these energies and vibrations. And I understand your grandfather was considered one of the wise people in these traditions.
Yes, well, growing up, I followed him around, and I lived with him for a number of years, and he would take me to the different sacred ceremonies, and I saw some of the ceremonies that he was doing, and I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. One winter I saw him go through a wall. We were doing a ceremony in an underground chamber, and since then my whole life changed, because at that point I understood that there was more going on than I realized. And then later on, we did another ceremony in the wintertime where the whole underground chamber lit up, and there was like a movie screen. He went right into it, and he told us, he said, keep watching me. Don't let your eyes move away from me, and just keep watching me until I come back. And he walked and he picked herbs in another dimension. And then came back, and then, of course, then the screen disappeared, and there was some fresh flowers there, and then he chopped them up, and we drank them. But that was my first introduction to realizing that there are other dimensions here, and that this may be just one of them.
So, what I hear you saying, what strikes me as a mainstream Western person, is that our culture, for all of its technological sophistication, has lost touch with these ways of accessing other dimensions of time and space that have been maintained by your native peoples.
I think that maybe that might be because it depends on what the intent is. The Western philosophy may have been one of, the intent was toward technological growth or success in that area, where traditionally the agrarian peoples, my father's people, were perhaps more interested in attaining the resonating vibrations of transformational potential rather than physical potential or literal potential that technological society produces, you see. Perhaps that was it. Maybe it was the intent. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You had a vision yourself at one time that has led you to travel around the world building what you call peace chambers or sound chambers where people come together to experience some of these resonating potentials. I wonder if you could describe the vision and some of this work.
Okay, after I had gone through graduate school, I have always been in search of truth, and I went through graduate school, got a master's degree, and came back. Then I decided, well, I would go back and study the ancient models. In this case, I chose my father's model, ancient model. And what they did was they would early on get young people to go on a vision quest and find their vision. Later, what they did was, it was almost a requirement that they go back every so often, maybe every year or 2 years or 3 years, and so that you go on a vision quest for the rest of your life. So I figured, well, that's what I'm going to do, and so that's what I started doing. And it was out of that I got the vision to build the sound peace chambers. In which case, as you know, when you get a vision, once you start working at becoming a visionary, you have to keep doing it. So that's one of the rules. So I decided, well, that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
And this vision came to you in about 3 seconds.
Yeah, in about 3 seconds. I had been dancing, marathon dancing, about the third day. It came in a flash, and it was all there. And then I started building it, building them. We have 22 of them around the world now.
And these are chambers, I guess traditionally amongst the Pueblo people, the kiva chambers are round, and they're half underground and half above ground.
Yeah, well, some are underground totally, some are above ground. These ones that came are oval in shape, and they're for people to chant for world peace. And the vision says that, you know, sound or chanting is what created cosmic consciousness, or the physical realm was created by sound, by the orchestration of vibration. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
It's what I'm trying to get at. And the sound chambers, apparently, by chanting to them, according to the vision now, is that when we chant the different sound vibrations, we then bring a kind of harmony to the kind of thinking that is taking place on the planet, and it rearranges for even greater stimulating ideas to appear, to entice us to move toward a more balanced society.
Of course, chanting has been used by almost every culture. The work that you have developed I find fascinating because of the great precision in your understanding of sound and its effect of, for example, different sounds affect different parts of the body.
Yes. Well, in my work with sound, I found that, for instance, if I wanted to get in touch with greatness, for instance, I could walk up to a tree and start rubbing the wood on that tree, and now as soon as I start rubbing the bark on that tree, it's going to start making a particular sound. Well, that sound is the same vibration as the vibration of greatness. So, for instance, and this comes out of Tiwa thought. So, by rubbing the tree, then I could test myself to see if I was performing at the highest capability I could be performing in that particular job or particular time in my life. And if I wasn't, it would indicate that I was out of synchronicity.
Yeah.
And as a result, I could readjust that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you write about the sense in which we enter into, I think you call it a place where there are no choices, where we're so in tune with the eternal vibrations flowing through us that everything is natural, and we don't have this kind of ego struggle of shall I do this or shall I do that.
Yes, I found that in my work with developing these forms, these inner forms, which I call inner forms, that once you get in synchronicity with these vibrations, in order for you to get into the highest form, they all have to be resonating equally.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can access even higher realms.
But I suppose for many of us who are cultivating, rugged individualism and the Western idea of choice and independence, that this may be more difficult than for people who are growing up naturally close to nature, close to the earth.
Well, I think once you get into the practice of getting back to nature, like through dancing, marathon dancing is one of the ways that we do it, or through fasting and dancing, that even Western orientationness begins to fall into the natural order of the life of the principal ideas that we are. And I have found that what's happening is that's the attraction that we've been missing.
Yeah.
Is really finding ourselves.
It's as if that pulse of eternity that you're describing is so much deeper than the thin veneer of civilization.
That's right, that's right. There's a deeper knowing, there's a deeper, it's almost a way to quench a thirst, a very deep thirst that's lying there.
Yeah. Joseph Rael, I have to say, being with you is like quenching my thirst for real authenticity. It's such a pleasure to have shared this time with you. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us. And for those of you who may be interested in deeper exploration of the work developed by Joseph Rael with sounds, you may like to know that an additional hour's discussion will be available as part of the Thinking Aloud Inner Work videotape series. Thank you again.